Okay guys, we're at a point now where we have finished, where we're looking at our instruction sheet. We're in Unit 2, of course. We have finished the video. We have then done the worksheet, which is up here. And it looks similar to, of course, doing our subfractions. And we just went over that video, so hopefully you've gotten the answers there. Keep in mind, I think the 3/8 scale, if I was to physically look at it real quick, those are 1 inch. 3/4 is 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch is 1/2 inch. And 1.5 inches. 1/4. Okay, so we've gotten that answered. Now we are going to move to the second part, which is going to be completing the worksheet. Keep in mind there's 2 parts of this worksheet. You have a 16th scale, which means full scale, 1-to-1, which has no scales here. And then you have your scales that it's asking for, 1/2 inch per foot, 3/8 or 3/32 per foot, and then so on. Keep in mind this is all 1-to-1, so it's just simply like grade school. Turn to our architect scale that is our 16ths, which is here. Simply put that down on there and read how many inches it is. So if I was to zoom into this guy, it's fairly simple. Okay, there is 7, there's 8, there's 7.5, there's 7 3/4. One thing you will notice about my printouts is as they continue to get printed out, the scaling line might be a little bit off, so that's why I have a tolerance of a 16th, because the small subdivision on a 16th scale is a 16th. So my answer here would be 7 3/4. So I'd simply write it, because this is a full scale, I would write 7 3/4 of an inch. Okay? It's very important that you put the quotations which represent inch, because there is no break between feet and inches, which we'll go over next. You won't need a dash, but these are together. Yes? So we'll just do one more together here. I'll put the 0 there, and then I come over here and I read it. So looking at it, if I really wanted to, I could physically count all these dashes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then if I wanted to, I can go 6/16, which then can reduce down to 3/8. So our answer here would be 6 3/8. Answer written, 6 3/8 of an inch. Very simple, yes. You will then go ahead and finish all of these. Keep in mind, if you get them wrong, it's not the end of the world. You simply just check them in with me. I highlight the ones I want you to go back and fix. You fix them, you come back. There's no point of trying to cheat on this, because if you don't understand this, all the following drawings after this is going to be nothing but a complete struggle, because you don't understand what measurements are required and how to decipher them on a scale. Okay, that's the easy one. Remember, that's a 16th scale, which is a 1-to-1, or also known as full scale. Okay, that one's done. Now we're on to the fun one. This is where you got to learn how to use an architect scale. So these are the scales we're going to be using, which is going to be 1/2 inch equals 1 foot 0 inches. Take in mind here, this is my scale. The equal sign is telling me what it's going to be equaling to, which is going to be 1 foot 0 inches. So to turn to here, let's find the 1/2 inch scale. There it is. One thing you will notice about these scales, especially these ones, is there is text size difference, which means the 0 and the 10, they're different complete text sizes. The small text will go with that corresponding scale on that side. This is a 1/2 inch per foot scale using the small text. If I scroll to the other side, but still stay on this side of the scale, you will find out that I'm dealing with large text versus the small text. Keep in mind, you got to keep that on the back of your head. Don't be reading this thinking that you are coming close to, or let's just imagine don't think this is 10 feet to that scale. That's actually 1 foot, because take a look, the smallest next text would be 2 feet, which means if that's 2 and that's 0, that must be 1. That's 1 foot. Over here, it's a little bit different. Why? Because this scale, if we're reading a scale smaller than a foot, we always use this area, right? But for this case, that 0, the next largest text the same size is that 1, which means that 20 represents 6 inches. Now, we'll never use that when we're trying to measure under a foot. We always measure using this scale. Okay, so to get back where we're at, now we understand the text size. Here's the first thing I do. I place that 0 on this line, on the beginning of the line. Whether I'm on this side or I'm on this side, it doesn't really matter, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply just put the 0 on there, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look at the nearest foot that is still touching this line. Meaning, remember, we're small text, so I'm coming over, there's 14, there's 16, which means that 3 represents 15 feet. So my next task is to simply move that 3, or also known as 15 feet, over to that line and then read my subfraction of a foot. So there's my 15 feet, and now I'm reading it. So we're going to come over here, we're going to get close. Zoom into that guy. Okay, here we are. Ready? So, physically noticing this is 12 inches, which means there is 1, 2, 3 lines that are all the same height. Okay? Which means there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So, what is 12 divided by 4? It's 3. So, all these tall lines represent 3 inches. Notice, if that's 3 inches, we got to find the subfraction, and I guess just so I can go over this, the smallest subfraction is 1/2 of an inch. Because if this is 6 and that is 9, we got 2 tall ones, which must represent 7, 8, 9. So there's 7, there's 6, which means there's only one more breakdown, which is 1/2 of an inch. So we already know that I'm dealing with 15 feet. And how many inches am I dealing with? Well, let's do it. There's 6 inches. There's 7 inches. It's halfway between the 6 and the 7, which means that must be 6.5 inches. So, 15 feet, 6 inches. So that's how you use the scale. The thing that I hate when people do is they will simply, this is a horrible practice, they'll put the 0 here, they'll see the 15, they'll mark it, and then they'll come over here and read the subfraction. Horrible method. Why? Because lines can be either really thin, or really thick. But when I'm reading them on a scale, that's a big tolerance there. Use the scale for its purpose. There's the 0, there's the 15, move the 15 down to the other side of the line, read the subfraction of a foot. Okay, so that's an easy one, right? Then we just go to the next one, 3/30 seconds. So we're going to roll it over, and I'm going to do this next one with you. Keep in mind, I was using the 1/2 inch scale, so that 0 is on this side, which means that 12 is on the right side of the scale. Over here, that 12 inches is on the left side of the scale, so they're going to go that way. Some of you may do this scale, and I've got a bunch of highlighted stuff, and it's because you're thinking that that's 3 inches. But you got to remember, that's the 0, so that must be the 3 inches, right? You're going to go 3 inches, 1 inch, 2 inch, not 0 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, that says 0 because you're doing it backwards. Make sure you look at your scale and what side of the 0 is. Okay, all right, 3:30 seconds, here we are. Let's roll it over. Here it is. So I'm going to lay it this way so we can see it. I'm going to roll this over here. Okay, notice the text size. I have 0. I have the 0. I have 4. Remember, we're dealing with small text. That's 62. Has nothing to do with this. it does represent something on this scale, because if that's 4 and this is 0, that must be 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, right? So that 62 for the 3/32 scale represents 1 foot. If I roll this over to this side, same. Sorry, my lights went out here. There they are. Okay, on this side, the 3/16 scale, the 0 is a lot larger than the 24, because that goes with the 3/32 scale. But at the same time, take a look. Is it going to help us in this case? There's 0, there's 2 feet. This must be 1 foot. Notice the height of the lines are different. So I got to stay with my same height lines. So that's 1 foot, which means that 24 is 6 inches. 6 inches, which then means I will never use that to measure. I'm always using, if I'm smaller than a foot, I'm using the subfraction of a foot. Okay, so to get back to here. There we are, zoom in. Okay, I'm at 3/32. I'm on the second one. I'm reading my 0. Here we are. I'm going to roll all the way over to here. I'm going to read this. There's 64. There's 68. 68 is off the line. But 67 is still on the line. It's still touching the line. So I'm going to move that 67 over to this line. And now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to read it. I know I'm 67 feet. And look at that. I'm dead on halfway. So my answer would simply say 67 parentheses, or however you want to say that. That represents feet. Dash breaks feet from inches. And I am 6 inches. Okay, guys, remember, go ahead, go through all of these. You will turn them into me, okay? They must be turned in together, okay, with highlighted or a stamp. If it's highlighted, you, of course, you go back and fix it, and then I'll do a C if it's wrong. But you turn them in together. At that point, then you will come forward, and you will bring me your sheet. At this point, I will give you your 20 points, okay? After you finish the worksheet, then you move to the test. All right, guys, that's the fraction. That is the reading and architect scale. Keep in mind key points. Remember to always look at the text size, right? And always remember that's a foot. No matter what, you always break it down. That's a foot, and you go from the tallest lines down to the smallest lines on how you subdivide that as you make your way through using the scale. If you have any other questions, please ask. Don't sit there and just try to figure it out yourself, because most likely, not saying you couldn't figure it out, but you're wasting a lot of time. So ask me, let's get the answer, let's move on from there.